Anantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. ISKCON BBD founder Acharya His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Mayapur Dham ki jai. Yamuna Mai ki jai. Ganga Mai ki jai. Bhakti ki jai. Tulasi Maharani ki jai. Veda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare
All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga.
Hare Hare.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Okay. Apparently, I was under a misapprehension. I thought my verse was text 30 today, but I see text 28 up there. Is that correct?
Yes, Prabhu, 28.
Oh, I don't know why I thought it was 30. Okay. So text reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, the creation, chapter 17, punishment and reward of Kali, text 28. E.T. Dharm, do we do it the same, that I should just read it through 3 times and then everyone will take turns?
Yes, Prabhu.
It's been a while since I've done a Zoom class.
Yes.
Iti dharmam mahim chaiva santvayitva maharata nishatam adade kadgam kalaye dharma hetave. Iti dharmam mahim chaiva santvayitva maharata nishatam adade kadgam Kalaye dharma hetave. Iti dharma mahim chaiva santvayitva maharata nishatam adade kadgam kalaye dharma hetave.
Hare Krishna. Iti dharmam mahim chaiva swantayitva maharatha nishadam adade skanga kalaye dharma hetave.
Iti dharmam mahim chaiva santvayitva maharatha nishatam adade khadgam kalaye dharma hetave.
Iti dharmam mahim chaiva santayitva maharadha nishatam adade khadgam kalaye dharma hetave.
Iti dharmam mahim chaiva shantvayitva maharatha nishatam adade khadgam kalaye adharma hetave.
Anyone else? Word for word translation. Iti, thus. Dharmam, the personality of religion. Mahim, the earth. Cha, also. Eva, as. Santvayitva, after pacifying. Maharata, the general who could fight alone with thousands of enemies. Nishatam, sharp. Adade, took up. Khadgam, sword. Kalaye, to kill the personified Kali. Adharma, irreligion. Hetave, the root cause. Translation. Maharaj Parikshit, who could fight 1,000 enemies single-handedly, thus pacified the personality of religion and the earth. Then he took up his sharp sword to kill the personality of Kali, who is the cause of all irreligion. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. As described above, the personality of Kali is he who deliberately commits all kinds of sinful acts which are forbidden in the revealed scriptures. This age of Kali will certainly be full of all activities of Kali. But this does not mean that the leaders of society, the executive heads, the learned and intelligent men, and above all the devotees of the Lord should sit down tightly and become callous to the reactions of the age of Kali. In the rainy season, certainly there will be profuse rainfalls, but that does not mean that men should not take means to protect themselves from the rains. It is the duty of the executive heads of state and others to take all necessary actions against the activities of Kali or the persons influenced by the age of Kali. And Maharaj Parikshit is the ideal executive head of the state, for at once he was ready to kill the personality of Kali with his sharp sword. The administrators should not simply pass resolutions for anti-corruptional steps, but they must be ready with sharp swords to kill the persons creating corruptions from the angle of vision of the recognized Shastras. The administrators cannot prevent corrupt activities by allowing wine shops. They must at once close all shops of intoxicating drugs and wine and force punishment even by death for those who indulge in habits of intoxication of all description. That is the way of stopping the activities of Kali as exhibited herein by Maharaj Parikshit, the Maharatha. Iti dharmam mahim chaiva santvayitva Maharatha nishatam adade khadgam kalaye dharma hetave. Maharaj Parikshit, who could fight 1,000 enemies single-handedly, thus pacified the personality of religion and the earth. Then he took up his sharp sword to kill the personality of Kali, who is the cause of all religion. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschita Deshatarine. Hare Krishna. First of all, I'll say again, I'm at a little bit of a loss since I was expecting to do 2 verses further up, text 30. I thought I must have missed the update of the schedule. And also I'm at a loss because this is a very difficult purport for me to accept and deal with. I'll say very frankly. Prabhupada is speaking about a very ideal world where the king is a ruler of the caliber of Maharaj Parikshit, that practically there's never been a king like him, and there was never a king afterwards like him in his, not just his strength in Dharma, but his knowledge of scriptures, his position as a devotee of Lord Krishna, as a grandchild of Arjuna, as the person who is chosen to receive Srimad Bhagavatam, by which it was distributed all over the world. So a person like that, perhaps you could concede that he has this imperial right to punish wrongdoers. But a person who is not of that caliber, it's very difficult for me to accept these sorts of injunctions. And sometimes devotees do say, oh, these type of sinners should be killed, or those type of sinners should be killed. But if the leader is not qualified like Parikshit Maharaj, then it's very dangerous to give that kind of absolute authority into the hands of such persons. And I'm going to try to work in what I was going to speak about. I'll try to work that into this class today. One of the reasons for that is Parikshit, he was not just powerful and mighty, and with his khadga, his sword, or his chopper, that he was prepared to chop off the head, and powerful. And, you know, we like this. We thrill all devotees. We love Mahabharat stories of the fighting and the big Kshatriyas, and they're so powerful. And Arjuna is shooting arrows. So many, they're blocking out the sun, and the fights and the battles. Everyone loves that. And it is awesome because these are the activities of Krishna and Krishna's devotees. But there's another side of Parikshit's personality that is going to come up. And that is that when the personality of Kali surrendered and bowed down and begged forgiveness, then Parikshit Maharaj, he actually refrained from killing him. He didn't say, oh, he's so sinful, it's better for society, I'll just kill him. But no, he also had in equal qualities. He had this great power, this great strength, and in equal capacity, he had mercy, compassion, and a soft-heartedness that allowed him to forgive and to refrain from instinctively or mechanically always calling on the sword as the solution to every problem. It's said in that upcoming verse that after he forgave Kali, Parikshit Maharaj, he smiled after he forgave Kali. And Prabhupada explains that he smiled because he was appreciating how Kali had surrendered and escaped death in that way. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also says that he's also smiling because Parikshit Maharaj looked within his heart and saw that he was also tainted by anger against the personality of Kali. So he was sort of smiling at himself or laughing at his own inadequacies. So this is the kind of leader that's really qualified to rule the world. Someone who has this amazing strength and this amazing power and determination, but also who has this heart, this introspection, and this sense of mercy. Both of these are extremely important, vital for a leader, or not just for a leader, for any person. In the 7th canto, there's a description of the Varnas and the ashrams. Also, Narada Muni speaking to Yudhishthir. And he says, first he gives qualities for all people, regardless of Varna, regardless of ashram. He says, Satyadaya tapasoksham titiksheksha samodama. That this is for all people. They have to be truthful. Everyone has to be truthful. Daya, you must be merciful. There's a saying that when you have a hammer in your hand, then every problem looks like a nail. So similarly, if you have a sword in your hand, then the tendency will be that every problem looks like it can be solved by chopping someone's head off. But mercy is also an essential quality in the toolbox of a good person. They have to have that strength, that determination, that discrimination to understand what's actually right and what's actually wrong. But daya also, mercy. Tapa, austerity. Shocham, cleanliness. And again, after daya, it said again, titiksha, which means tolerance, mercy, tolerance, being able to tolerate the offense of others, that you don't immediately explode at any slight. Iksha, and discrimination, means the ability to actually discriminate when is the proper time to be powerful and to use the sword, or to use law, or to use strictness, and when is the proper time to use compassion, mercy, and forgiveness. And sama and dhamma, controlling the mind, controlling the senses. And also in this list of qualities recommended for all people, of course, also included is Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, all of the activities of devotional service. Because without that quality, one can't be a leader, one can't be a good person. Rather, his so-called good qualities are just imaginary or useless. But if someone actually engages in devotional service, then he has all the good qualities of the demigods. So this is in the 7th canto. Then there's this specific qualities, not just of all people, but of a kshatriya, of the kshatriyas like Parikshit Maharaj. Soryam tejo dritir daksham yude chapya pirlayatam danam ishwar abhavas cha kshatram karma swabhavajam. This is the description of the kshatriyas from Bhagavad Gita, that they're powerful, they're victorious, they're strong, they're determined, they're expert. Yude chapya, they're always victorious in battle. They're charitable, and Ishwar Bhav, they have this mood, the Ishwar Bhav, the mood of being the controller, the mood of being in charge. This is the Kshatriya. The Kshatriya's duty is to be in charge, to run things. Kshatram karma swabhavajam. These are the qualities by which a Kshatriya works. So this description in Bhagavad Gita describes this very, I hesitate to use the word macho, but this very powerful, dynamic, fighting and battling and winning and controlling aspect of the Kshatriya. And this is important. But going back to the 7th canto, there's also a description of the qualities of the Kshatriya there. Again, in Narada explaining to Yudhishthir. And he expands on this a little bit. And remember, Bhagavad Gita, first of all, Bhagavad Gita, as Prabhupada said, is the ABCs of spiritual life. And Bhagavatam is the graduate study. So naturally, we're going to find more elaboration, more nuance, more further explanation and expansion of the ideas. Also, Bhagavad Gita, in the speaking of it, Krishna had a purpose. He had a very specific purpose in Bhagavad Gita. Many purposes, actually. One of them is to enlighten everyone in the world, including fools like me, by being able to hear Bhagavad Gita. But he also had an immediate purpose, that he wanted the battle of Kurukshetra to happen, and Arjuna, the main actor of that battle, the person who was the key person of all the millions of warriors, Arjuna was key, and he was unwilling to fight. So Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita to get Arjuna to fight. So therefore, when he's describing the qualities of a Kshatriya, he's saying, be determined, be victorious, fight, powerful. You know, just like earlier in the Bhagavad Gita, he says, don't be like a eunuch, don't be weak-minded, don't be impotent, but get up and fight. So he had a purpose in Bhagavad Gita. So now again, in Srimad Bhagavatam, these ideas of what the Kshatriya is are expanded a little further. Soryam viryam dhritis teja, tyagas chatma jaya kshama, brahmanyata prasadas cha satyam cha kshatra lakshanam. Again, some of the same qualities are there. Soryam, he's victorious. Viryam, he's powerful. Dhriti, he's unmoving like the earth itself. Tejas, he's powerful. But then some other qualities are being added. Tyagas, he's supposed to be renounced. He's not just mad after, the Kshatriya is not simply mad after power. He's also supposed to be renounced. Atmajaya, he's conquered his self. He's not under the sway of his, the whims of his mind, his senses, like that. He's conquered himself. Kshama, he's tolerant, he's forgiving. This is also qualities of a Kshatriya. Brahmanyata prasadascha, he's indebted to and a defender of and an appreciator of Brahminical culture. That means the Kshatriyas have their qualities, the Brahmanas have their qualities, but the Kshatriya also in one sense, embraces or at least worships these qualities of the Brahmana. Prasadas, he's jolly. Prabhupada translates this nicely. He says that he's always jolly. He's happy, he's satisfied. He's not a bully or a meanie, like a schoolyard bully may seem externally like a kshatriya because he's beating everyone up, but he's not. That's not the kshatriya. Satyam and satyam, again, satyam, that he's always truthful. Kshatriya lakshanam, these are the qualities of the kshatriya. So this is a more expanded description of the qualities of a kshatriya that include forgiveness and humility and renunciation, these other qualities. Because if you have one of these qualities, if you have the power and the strength, but without the heart, then that's not a proper kshatriya. And if you're, I forgive you, all forgiving, it's all nice, I'm not qualified, I can't, then the kshatriya can't correct anything and he can't rule anything. So the proper kshatriya knows how to balance these qualities. When to use the sword, when to forgive, when to be strict, when to be lenient. This is the intelligence of a good kshatriya. Parikshit was undoubtedly Maharata, the word is used, means he could fight 1,000 other soldiers simultaneously at once. But his mercy is also such an important qualification of his, so important. If you'll forgive me, I'm going to read a little bit of Shakespeare here. This is from The Merchant of Venice. The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven. Upon the place beneath, it is twice blessed. It blesseth him that gives and him that takes. 'Tis mightiest in the mightiest. It becomes the throned monarch better than his crown. His scepter shows the force of temporal power, the attribute to awe and majesty wherein doth sit the dread and fear of kings. But mercy is above this sceptered sway. It is enthroned in the hearts of kings. It is an attribute of God himself. And earthly power doth then show likest gods when mercy seasons justice. So Shakespeare, for all his being a mundane person, he had a lot of intelligence and a lot of insight on a lot of things. So the quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven. Upon the place beneath, it is twice blessed, him that gives and him that takes. So this is the quality of mercy. It comes from heaven. It comes from God himself. This quality of mercy comes. And when it's expressed, the person who gives mercy to another is blessed, and the person who receives that mercy is also blessed. It's mightiest in the mightiest. He describes that the powerful people in this world have the greatest opportunity to give mercy. The monarch on the throne, he has the most power to offer mercy to others. That power is what creates awe and majesty and fear in the world. But when such a person shows mercy, then he's actually manifesting an attribute of God himself. So this is the quality of mercy, as we see in a couple of verses, we'll see described, ascribed to Maharaj Parikshit in his forgiveness. Now, there's no Vedic Kshatriyas today, not even one. So I have nothing to say as far as practical application, but these qualities are understandable and appreciable for all of us. How to be strong, how to be determined, and how to be merciful, and how to be tolerant, and how to be forgiving, and how to balance these. And of course, as always, Srila Prabhupada is the most perfect understanding and example of this. Prabhupada was no kshatriya. He was an elderly gentleman, not very tall. He certainly exuded a kind of strength and power that anyone could see, but I don't think most people would necessarily associate that with physical prowess or with weapons or anything. But what power and what determination Prabhupada had, leaving his country at an old age with nothing, practically nothing. He had a trunk of books. He had a little bag of cereal because he didn't know, come to America, maybe there's only meat. I don't know, maybe there's nothing even I can eat. So he brought a little bag of cereal and he brought 40 rupees in cash. No US money, just 40 Indian rupees. Which incidentally, when he went back to India, whatever was 5, I guess it was like 4 years later, he went back to India. He still had that same 40 rupees that he came with. So he came with 40 rupees, which at that time in the exchange rate was about $8. Today, I think it's probably about 50 cents. So what kind of power, what kind of firmness of character, what kind of strength does it take to do that? Now, those of us, we go to India and we have our debit cards with unlimited capacity and we fly first class and there's a taxi waiting for us, already booked, a limousine waiting for us, already booked at the airport to take us to our first class hotel. Doesn't take as much firmness and determination, but what Prabhupada did was so amazing. Literally, in a very literal sense, he was risking his life after he had those stroke or heart attack, whatever it was he had on the boat over, and so much he went through, but he had that amazing determination. So that strength and determination, was he equal to any kshatriya? But why did he do it? Because he also had this amazing, intense sense of compassion. I don't have it in front of me, but most of us might be familiar with the poem that Srila Prabhupada wrote, expressing his mood that, oh, these foolish people in the West are so degraded. I just want to give them the message of Srimad Bhagavatam and the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as instructed by my spiritual master. So Prabhupada is perfectly manifesting this firmness and also the sense of mercy. Even risking so much, not only risking health, but even his strictness. Prabhupada was a very strict sannyasi, a very strict Vaishnava. He followed everything, actually his whole life. He followed the Vaishnav principles and the regulative principles so perfectly, but he was willing to sacrifice a little bit when he came here. When he was staying in the Bowery with Carl Jurgens was one of the persons who hosted Srila Prabhupada for some time. Eventually got initiated, but I don't think he took Krishna consciousness very seriously. Prabhupada was living with him, and he went to put some of his food in the refrigerator, and he saw, oh, there's meat in the refrigerator for the cat. So now, not only that, but any of these, Indian Babajis or Sparta Brahmins or anything like that, if they came to America and saw how people were living, people in general, and these hippies in particular, in general, how they were living, they would practically speaking just faint. But Prabhupada came and he tolerated so much that even he would sacrifice, okay, this is forbidden, living in a house like this with people with meat in the refrigerator. This is disgusting. But he did it because he had the determination and he also had the sense of mercy. How am I going to help these people? How am I going to save these people? This is Prabhupada speaking himself. He was talking about how he was, sometimes people would say that Prabhupada was very conservative. It's, oh, no illicit sex, no drugs. This is so conservative. So Prabhupada was remembering, he said, you cannot find in Kali Yuga that everything is being done very correctly to the point. That is very difficult. Just like our poet, Allen Ginsberg, actually Prabhupada used to pronounce his name Ginsberg, Allen Ginsberg. He was always accusing me, Swamiji, you are very conservative and strict. Actually, I told him I am never strict, neither I am conservative. If I become conservative, then I cannot live here for a moment. So I am not at all conservative. I was living with one boy, Carl Jurgens. I was cooking and I saw in the refrigerator some pieces of meat for his cat. So still I kept my food in that refrigerator. What can be done? So Prabhupada's firmness and his mercy and his tolerance, kshama, again, one of the qualities of a devotee, one of the qualities of a kshatriya is kshama, that he can tolerate all sorts of difficulties. And then he started actually giving people Krishna consciousness. But even then, he had to tolerate so much. At the first initiation, he received no dakshin. Practically, he received no help, even cleaning up after the fire sacrifice and everything. He had to do himself. People weren't helping. And then a few days after the initiation, some of the devotees came up and started asking questions. And they said, oh, so that means now we're not supposed to take drugs. Now we're not supposed to eat meat. And Prabhupada's reply was, I am very glad that you're finally asking me that. So how much he tolerated and how much he sacrificed for the sake of starting this movement, because of this combined qualities of very firm, powerful determination, unshakable determination, and also a sense of mercy and forgiveness and tolerance in his heart. Sometimes foolish people in India, some of Prabhupada's godbrothers criticized, saying, oh, Swamiji, he was only successful because he is able to deal with low-class people. And of course, the people he were dealing with were low-class people. But this is such a misunderstanding. That's like saying, oh, Parikshit Maharaj, he forgave Kali only because he knows how to deal with low-class people. This is not understanding the heart of a devotee, the quality of mercy in a devotee's heart. And knowing how to balance that strength and that forgiveness at the same time is essential quality of a devotee. Chaitanya Charitamrita says, Mahanu Bhavera Chitera Swabhava Ehai Pushpasama Komala Katina Vajramai. That the great souls, the great devotees, you can't understand, you can't read their minds, you can't read their heart, but you can see that their quality, their anubhav, their qualification, their behavior is that pushpasama komal, that they're as soft as a flower, softer than a flower, softer than a rose, and katina vajramaya, and as hard as a thunderbolt. So the intelligent devotee has both of these qualities, and he knows how to balance them, and he knows how to express them both properly, as Parikshit Maharaj did. And Prabhupada could also be very strict when the time came. Despite his tolerating so many nonsense from his disciples, his early disciples, he never was soft in the sense of, oh, okay, you don't have to do, or, oh, you could do, instead of Krishna consciousness, you could do some yoga or some this or some that. That he was very strict. One person was having some mental difficulties, and in a class, he was saying, but what about my mind? What about my mind? And Prabhupada said, I have nothing else to offer you but this Krishna consciousness, but this Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. I have nothing else to offer you. He didn't offer anything else. Oh, you practice yoga and you'll be fine, or you do this and you'll be fine. He said, no. He was so strict, so firm like that, that Krishna consciousness is the only solution to the problems of life. And that was the only thing he ever gave and the only thing he ever offered to his disciples. In that sense, there was no compromise, no softness. But his softness was in knowing how to deal with people and give this topmost thing to even the lowest class of person. That's his intelligence, softer than a rose, harder than a thunderbolt. And this is a quality not just of the great devotees, but of Krishna himself. Just like going back to Shakespeare, Shakespeare said that this mercy is an attribute of God himself. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, in a purport in the third canto, Prabhupada writes, the fall of Duryodhana, the leading son of Dhritarashtra, was not pleasing to the Lord, although he was on the side of Arjuna, and it was he who advised Bhima how to break the thighs of Duryodhana while the fight was going on. The Lord is constrained to award punishment upon the wrongdoer, but he is not happy to award such punishments because the living entities are originally his parts and parcels. He is harder than the thunderbolt for the wrongdoer and softer than the rose for the faithful. So Krishna arranges. Actually, in this instance, it was Krishna himself who gave the hint to Bhim to break Duryodhana's thighs with his club. It was Krishna himself who did that. And yet he was still heartbroken to see Duryodhana suffering like that. He felt sad like that. Because this quality, Krishna, he's hard and he's soft. He's the Lord of karma. All of the sufferings, this whole material world is full of suffering by his creation. But why? For our rectification, therefore he does it. And it gives him no pleasure to see the living entities suffer. It breaks his heart. And therefore he wants so much for us to come back to him and escape this suffering. Therefore he comes himself. He sends the scriptures, he descends as his holy name, and he sends his devotees to vigorously preach all over the world to make this happen. So this mercy is actually prime quality of Krishna. Actually, in one sense, the prime quality. In the Krishna book, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in this chapter, the prayers of the personified Vedas, there's a nice section which I'll read. This is from Krishna book, chapter 87, prayers by the personified Vedas. The prayers of the Vedas personified illustrates that the Vedas are meant for helping the conditioned souls to understand Krishna. All the Shrutis, or personified Vedas, offered glories to the Lord again and again, singing Jai, Jai. This indicates that the Lord is the most glorious. Of all his glories, the most important is his causeless mercy upon the conditioned souls in reclaiming them from the clutches of Maya. I'll read that last sentence once more. Of all his glories, the most important is his causeless mercy upon the conditioned souls in reclaiming them from the clutches of Maya. So this is as glorious as Krishna is, as powerful as Krishna is. This is his greatest power. The personified Vedas were chanting Jai, Jai. Jai literally means victory. So again, if you have a one-sided view, you may think victory means, I smashed my enemy, I cut off his head, or I put an arrow in his heart. That means I'm victorious. But real victory is this, that you give someone Krishna consciousness, or Krishna makes Krishna consciousness available to someone, or we conditioned souls take Krishna consciousness into our heart. This is Jai. This is real victory. Therefore, Parikshit Maharaj also exhibited this quality. He was ready to kill Kali, but he was also ready to tolerate and forgive him to some degree. So we as devotees, I'm not on the quality of Parikshit Maharaj, nor of Srila Prabhupada, nor even a advanced devotee at all. But we all have to have this intelligence. We have to know how to be very strict in following the principles of Krishna consciousness, not to water it down, not to whimsically include or exclude things that shouldn't be, to change it. Prabhupada said many times that this is the disease of you Westerners, that you want to take something and change something new. So this is a disease, this is a problem. So we have to learn this intelligence, how to balance this strictness with this tolerance, with this mercy. I once had a discussion with His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami many years ago. I had him over for lunch in Gitanagari, and we were talking after Prasad, and he was saying that devotees go through a lot in their life and over the course of lives, and we're only seeing one spot moment in that devotee's progress. And sometimes they may be going up, sometimes they may be going down, and it's even over the course of lifetimes. There's ups and downs and changes and reverses and advances. So we can't see the totality of what a person is going through. Therefore, we should be very merciful and very tolerant in allowing people to engage in devotional service and to accept them as devotees and to invite them into Srila Prabhupada's wonderful ISKCON movement. We should be very open and inviting like that. But then he also said the exceptions are if someone is harming devotees or someone is actively harming the existence or the reputation of Srila Prabhupada's ISKCON. Then we have to be very strict and exclude such persons if necessary to protect the devotees and to protect Srila Prabhupada's ISKCON. So both extremes are again not good. Overly soft, overly merciful, overly tolerant to the point that we compromise principles is not good. But overly strict, overly harsh, like Prabhupada said, if I was conservative, I couldn't even live here. And ISKCON, without going into anything, ISKCON has made mistakes in both ways. I've made mistakes in both ways. That sometimes excluding people who shouldn't have been excluded, who should have been accepted and tolerated in ISKCON and actually would have benefited ISKCON. We've lost many people because of being too harsh, because of being too strict. And we've also had problems because of tolerating people who are offensive or harmful to devotees or harmful to our movement, and tolerating that. That's also been a problem. So we have to understand this mood of Srila Prabhupada. Just like another nice story from the early days of ISKCON. There was one hippie type person who was he was actually living at 26 2nd Avenue in the very, very early days, just sleeping in the storefront. And his name was Don. And he was a user of marijuana, as was so many people back then. And then the word came down, Swamiji said, no, you shouldn't use this marijuana. So one time he was in the temple, he was living there in the storefront, and Mukunda, I think he was still, what was his name, Michael, at the time, came in, walked into the storefront and smelled marijuana. He said, oh, Don, are you smoking marijuana? You know, Swamiji said, don't do that. And Don said, no, I'm not doing that. And then Mukunda reached over into his shirt pocket and reached in and pulled out a joint, a marijuana cigarette. And then Don punched him in the face. So when Prabhupada heard that, he said, no, Don has to go. He was willing to tolerate so many things. And many of the devotees, they were smoking, they were drinking coffee, whatever fall downs they were doing, he was willing to tolerate. But here's a person who's committing violence, who's threatening the existence of his very early, very fledgling movement. Remember, ISKCON had just started so early. Maybe it was not even incorporated yet. So in that case, he said, Don, no, he has to go. That was where the strictness stepped in, that you're harming devotees, you're threatening this movement, you cannot stay. But in other cases, Prabhupada was willing to tolerate, just like another nice story from California, early days. Shama Sundar was actually, first of all, devotees, was it Malati maybe, who found in a little gift shop little wooden deities of Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra. And she thought, oh, this looks far out. She didn't even know what it was really. But she did it and brought it and showed it to Swamiji. And he said, oh, that's Jagannath, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then eventually he asked Shama Sundar to carve large Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra deities. And those were the first deities in California. So he got the big pieces of wood and he was working and carving. And sometimes Prabhupada would actually call him up at the place and say, how are you doing? How's the carving going? And sometimes he would visit. And one time he visited, and I've heard two different versions of this story. One is that Prabhupada walked in and the half-carved deity of Jagannath was there, and sitting on top of the head of the unfinished deity was a pack of cigarettes. And Prabhupada tolerated it because Shama Sundar at that time was still smoking. And the other version I heard is that Prabhupada walked in and there was a pack of cigarettes on the floor. And so Prabhupada took his cane that he would walk with it. He took the cane and like he was like playing, like doing golf. He took it and he took the cane and knocked the pack of cigarettes across the floor to the other side. And eventually he instructed Shama Sundar, stop smoking. I think I also heard, I think they recommended you every day you smoke 1 cigarette less than the day before. So this is also mercy and strictness combined, how intelligent he was to do that. So this is Prabhupada. He had this strictness and he had this softness. One more little story I'll tell that Prabhupada told. I don't know if there's any Bengalis in the audience today, but if there are, you may have heard of Michael Madhusudana Dutt. I don't know if he was famous all over India or just in Bengal, but he was like the foremost poet, the foremost Bengali poet, Michael Madhusudan Dutt. His name was Madhusudan, but he really hated Indian culture. So he became a Christian and he married a Westerner and he took the name Michael. So Michael Madhusudan Dutt, but he was famous, the most famous Bengali poet. And when he moved to England with his British wife, he was very poor and suffering. Actually, he was suffering terrible poverty. So he thought, oh, if I could go to school and I could become a barrister, I can make a living. But he had no money to pay for school. And he asked some friends and no one would give him any money. Finally, he asked one acquaintance whose name was Vidyasagar. And he said, oh, can you help me out? Give me some money so I could go to school and become a barrister and support my family. And this person agreed to. And first this Michael Madhusudan Dutt said, oh, you are not Vidyasagara, you are Dayasagara. So Vidyasagara, the name means the ocean of, Vidyasagara means ocean of knowledge, ocean of learning. But he said, no, you're Dayasagara, you're ocean of mercy. And then he said about this friend Vidyasagar, he said, you have the courage of a British soldier and the heart of a Bengali mother. So Prabhupada would quote this at least a couple of times. He quoted this phrase from this Madhusudan, that you have the courage of a British soldier, but the heart of a Bengali mother. So this is Prabhupada. He had this amazing courage, this amazing determination and strength and power, that he had thousands of people all over the world bowing at his feet. What power he had. What amazing power he had. But he has this heart of love, of mercy, that he's doing all these powerful, amazing things out of this love, out of this compassion for the conditioned souls, the heart of the Bengali mother. And he had that because he has that humility of a Vaishnava. At the very end of Srila Prabhupada's life, near the end, when he was in Vrindavan, and some of his godbrothers were occasionally visiting him in his last days. And sometimes he would make almost like confessions. He says, oh, sometimes I was very harsh in my preaching. I've committed so many offenses in my attempts to preach. Please forgive me. And one time he said, I am Mahapatita. I am the most fallen. And one version of the story said it was Krishnadas Babaji. One version of the story said it was his godbrother Puri Maharaj. Said, no, you are not Mahapatita. You are Mahapatita Pavana. So because he had that humility, he was able to have that strength. And because he had that humility, he was also able to have that compassion for others. Because humility is at the heart of compassion. If you're thinking, I'm so powerful, I'm so great, I'm the big king, I'm the big leader, I'm the big sannyasi, whatever, everyone has to bow to me, everyone has to listen to me, then the quality of mercy is killed by that. But if you have humility, that I'm just a tiny conditioned soul servant of Krishna, who am I to, I have to maintain the standards and I have to give Krishna consciousness properly, but I can't demand that I personally am the big gun or the big leader. And from that, mercy can come, from that compassion can come. And this is true of ourselves as well. One more mundane quotation, if you'll forgive me, was the great Roman king and philosopher Marcus Aurelius, who said, we should be very strict with ourselves, but lenient with others. So we should be compassionate, we should be tolerant. And even with ourselves, we have to be strict with ourselves. We have to hold ourselves to the proper standard. But even with ourselves, we can't be so strict that we're discouraging ourselves. This is the Vaishnava mood. I'm the most fallen. I'm so fallen. But when this mood is accepted in an impure way, it can actually be a source of discouragement and a source of depression, rather than a source of enthusiasm and ecstasy. That I'm so fallen, but Krishna is so merciful that he's giving me this amazing opportunity in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, I'll joyfully and enthusiastically take this. But if you think, oh, I'm so fallen, I'm useless, I'm nothing, I can't do anything, so I'm going to go away. This is the misuse of that. So even in dealing with ourselves, we have to be a little intelligent. How to be strict? We want to be very strict with ourselves, follow the principles. But there may also be some times when we have to cut ourselves a little bit of slack here and there so that we can stay enthused, so that we can stay enlivened and engaged in Krishna consciousness. As always, this can be misused. We can make excuses for being slack just so we can enjoy our senses. But if we're intelligent and take the advice of devotees, we can know how to apply this intelligently. In Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami quotes the Skanda Purana, stating that we should accept scriptural vows that are mrigya shreyasam, that give the best, topmost benefit, and are also easy to do. Santapa varjitam. Santapa varjitam, you could tell from the Sanskrit, literally means without austerity, without tapasya. So things that are easy to do, and Prabhupada explains it in Nectar of Devotion. He says the purport is that one should not neglect following the principles of devotional service, nor should one accept the rulings of devotional service which are more than that which he can easily perform. For example, it may be said that one should chant the Hare Krishna mantra at least 100,000 times daily on his beads. But if this is not possible, then one must minimize his chanting according to his own capacity. We are all jivas, we are all marginal, and we're all faulty in so many ways, me most of all. So we want to be strict with ourselves, but we have to keep ourselves engaged and enlivened. So we have to be merciful with ourselves as well. And when we're preaching to others, to our friends, to our family, to strangers on the street, we want to be very strict that this is what Krishna consciousness is. It's not something else. It's not something different. And we kick out sense gratification, but we also have to be merciful. How to deal with people, how to invite people, how to make them feel accepted and happy to take part in this Krishna consciousness movement. And Parikshit Maharaj does this, and Prabhupada did this, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna himself, does this. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Again, I'll apologize once more that I sort of twisted the class today to fit into what I had been prepared to say, because I was taken by surprise by the verse. So I hope you'll forgive me. I hope you found it interesting and useful. If there's any questions or comments or discussion, we can do that now.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
If I was in your situation, I probably would have passed out and
it's hard for me because I don't know if anyone knows, but I really like to prepare. Like I literally will spend like all week, reading and rereading the verse and looking up references and taking notes. So it's hard for me, but thank you everyone for your tolerance.
If you had not mentioned it, we would not have even noticed it. But just coming back to all that you said, one thing that I have always struggled with is when tolerance is a lot of times mistaken for weakness. And
yeah, just like I said, how some of Prabhupada's God brothers said, oh, you were successful because you could deal with low-class people. They're taking a glory and seeing it as a weakness, as a bad quality.
Yeah, I mean, also because you're not able to be strong. That's why you are tolerant. You accepted low-class people, that is putting the fault on the opposite side. But even on the person, themselves. It's, you're not able to demand more, and that's why you're tolerating. But you explained it very nicely, and this is, I think, the dichotomy in ISKCON. Everything is achintya, a lot of things, they seem contradicting, but I think that is the essence of it. Intelligence is when you have to deal with two opposite sides and make it work.
Yeah, nicely put. Just like, and even, I mean, sometimes it can be valid that if someone is always accepting but never stands up for what the actual principles are, then maybe that criticism could actually have some validity. Or similarly, someone who's always strict and is never willing to bend, then a criticism like that, or you're too strong, you're not merciful, can have some validity. So again, we need to embrace both of these. I'm reminded of, this was, I can't remember if it was a morning class or Sunday feast class of Vishnu Gada Prabhu, and he was talking about this idea in Krishna consciousness that there are principles and there are details. So Prabhupada said, when Prabhupada was asked, how do you distinguish what's a principle and what's a detail? He said, that takes some intelligence. So similarly, how to balance strictness and even ferocity. Sometimes Prabhupada would be so ferocious in his preaching, or just like it said of Bhakti Siddhanta, he was lion guru, Singha guru. So this ferociousness would be there, but also the balance, the softness. So again, that same answer is there. It takes a little intelligence, a little practice, a little intelligence, a little constant consultation with learned devotees, a little practice, and we'll learn how to do it. Thank you.
If anybody else has anything to add, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
You said you were not prepared, but you gave us very good class. You're always, I wait for your class. It's very, very much informative. And yes, Prabhupada did a lot, and I have to learn a lot from these words,
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. But thank you very much for a nice class, Prabhu.
You're welcome.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Kalpesh Prabhu. Kalpesh Prabhu has his hand up.
Yes, go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna.
I mean, I after hearing your class, I felt like there are so many points I need to revisit and contemplate on those. Maybe I'm not able to grasp everything on this lecture, but there were so much good points, so many good points. So thank you for that. Often I struggle while walking on this path and trying to see how can I be a good devotee. And sometimes the impressions which we have in our mentality, this is a question for me, is how to overcome the feeling that other has to change in order for me to become a good devotee or perfect devotee. And seeing faults in others, but I myself know I am weak on my end, but I still see it, and I try to seek perfection in looking at people, and they can change. Then only I am a good devotee. I mean, that perception is being strong,
Right.
and that judgment is coming by, maybe it is some events, situations which we are interacting with, and as soon as our senses are falling on that, we kind of just interpret it according to our own impurities. So I know that I'm impure, but still I'm not able to overcome that.
So let me see if I understand. You're saying that you're feeling that, or the feeling is that, my Krishna consciousness is dependent on other people changing their ways or doing certain things.
Yes, that's one of the end, and because when we are learning this, we are also seeing the faults, that what is not right outside. But actually, I am also wrong in many ways, in so many other ways, you know. But I know myself, but still struggle in between those two things.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's an interesting point. And first, I'll say that there's one way in which, not that that is true, but that it has some validity, that Prabhupada sometimes would say that a Vaishnava is judged by how many Vaishnavas he makes. So in one sense, if we can actually influence others to take up Krishna consciousness or to take it up more nicely, then that is a kind of, in one sense, a measure or an indication of our own advancement in Krishna consciousness. But of course, we can't do that entirely. Prabhupada made so many devotees, and so many people also came to him and went away. So we don't judge him as better or worse because of the number of people who came or went away. Or again, as Prabhupada would also say, that ultimately we can instruct others, just like in flying an airplane, he said. Now we can give lessons, but ultimately everyone has to fly their own airplane. And ultimately we're responsible for our own advancement. But we're also in a society. So our individual advancement is also in community with others. And we're a preaching movement. So our individual advancement is also in how we deal with others. So there's an angle of this that we can take positively. But your point is there that it's our individual Krishna consciousness which will save us. We fly our own airplanes, and no other person can force us into Krishna consciousness by snapping their fingers or whatever. And no one else can keep us from Krishna consciousness either. It's our individual responsibility. But yeah, that's a nice thing to remember, nice thing to think about. And usually when we think like that, oh, if I could change others, it's usually because we're conditioned souls, or at least in my case, I want to change others to boost my ego or to get me some sense gratification or something like that. So it's an interesting issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody, for your kind attention. Is there any last questions, or do we wrap it up?
I don't see any other hands up.
Okay. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Like I said, it's been a long time since I've given a class to the Zoom audience, and you're all a great group. I appreciate everyone, tuning in all the time, day after day. This is a great thing. And thank you very much for letting me take part.
Yeah, you're telling us a lot of things. You're a very good preacher. That's why.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Everyone have a nice day.
Hare Krishna.
Panchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindhudevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.